Hi, this is Sarit Switzer, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast, a podcast devoted to the teachings of Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi as recorded in his most famous work, the Tanya. My hope for this show is to make these teachings accessible and relatable to the average person, regardless of prior Jewish education or affiliation. The episodes follow the prescribed daily study portions and are meant to serve as practical lessons in how to live your life as your true self and develop an authentic and powerful relationship with your Creator. I have personally experienced the effects the study of this work has had on me, and I'm excited to share what I can of this knowledge with you. So please join me on this journey of learning, self-growth, and connection with your source. Hi, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast. This is episode 59 for the 18th of Shevat in a leap year. So I want to ask you guys a question, as I usually do. Think about the last time that you were thirsty and you wanted to get a glass of water. What did you do? So chances are, if you were able to do so, if you were in an area that, had water accessible and thank God your limbs are functional and working, you probably got up from wherever you were, walked into the kitchen, let's say, or wherever the water and the cups were, found a cup, maybe in a cabinet or whatever, used your eyes to locate it, and then used your fingers and your hands and your arms, to locate that cup, to take the cup out of the cabinet, to find the pitcher of water, again, using your eyes and your feet, and then taking that water and pouring it into a cup, and then eventually bringing it up to your lips and drinking the water. And very exciting, you got to drink that water and your will was fulfilled of drinking the water, right? So very exciting. So cool. You got to drink water. You got to fulfill your wish. So let's break that down a little bit. Is if you notice, there's your will, and then there's the final result of that will, right? Of the drinking the water. And then in between, there was something that you needed in order to fulfill that will. And what was that thing that you needed in order to fill that will? Those were your limbs. That was your body, the different parts of you, the organs that function in order to bring you where you need to go, in order to help you actualize what you need in the world. So what we'll learn about today is lahavdil, very different for God, obviously, but God too has limbs, so to speak. And these limbs are what we call the 248 mitzvahs, the positive commandments. This is what they're referred to in the Zohar. And what this means really, and this is what we're going to learn about today, is that when we say that God's limbs are these 248 commandments. So again, if we think about that example of us getting up to get water, in order to get that water, our limbs are not just something extra. They're actually 100% essential. They are what allow us to get that water. So what we'll learn about when it comes to God is God too has a will. We've talked about already how God's will is to make this world into a dwelling place for him. We talked about how God wants to bring his vitality down into the world and how everything is ultimately totally dependent upon him for its existence and for its vitality. How does this come about? How does this actually come into being? Is through his organs, through his limbs, which are the 248 commandments. And who did he give those to? Who performs the commandments? That's us. That's the Jewish people. So what we'll learn about and begin to learn about today is about how essential we are as Jews for bringing about this plan of God, and how it's actually not just like an accessory nice thing that God wants us to do these commandments, but it's actually really, really, really essential and really crucial for us to do these things, because the entire vitality of God in terms of its manifestation down here in the world is actually totally and 100% dependent upon our mitzvahs, dependent upon us performing this will of God. So let's get into the text, and we'll start to learn a little bit about it in the Alter Rebbe's own words. So the Alter Rebbe says here, it's chapter 23, and he says that keeping everything above in mind. So what's everything above? It's, if you haven't learned the previous episodes, go back and listen to them, please. But just like really in brief, it's this idea that everything is totally and 100% dependent upon its vitality and existence for God, and nothing at all has an independent existence other than God. And that not only that, but what is the ultimate essential existence of everything in our world and in every world is essentially God's speech. And we talked about also how God gives his vitality to everything, whether it's in a face-to-face kind of way, when to those things which express him in a more overt fashion, or in a more backhanded way to those things which don't really express the will of God in an overt fashion. And so with all this in mind, the Alter Rebbe says, we're going to understand what this thing is, this idea that's brought up in the Zohar, where it says that the Torah and God are one. And about how it says in the Tikkunim, in the Tikkunei Zohar, that the explanation for this is that the 248 commandments, positive commandments, are nothing but the 248 organs or limbs of the king. Sometimes it's translated as organs, sometimes limbs. And this is because the mitzvahs, what are the mitzvahs? The mitzvahs are the inner will of God. This is his true desire, which is vested in all the worlds, from above to below, to give them life. Because their entire life force and their entire influence is totally and 100% dependent upon the action of the mitzvahs of the lower beings, as is known. So again, go back to our analogy of going to try to get water from the kitchen. In order for us to fulfill our desire of getting water from the kitchen, we're 100% dependent upon our organs to do these things. What are the organs of God? The organs of God are the mitzvahs, the positive commandments. And so what we find out of this is that doing these mitzvahs is a garment for an inner garment for the inner will of God. And that from this action, this is how the light and vitality of the supernal will comes down to become vested in the worlds. And this is the end of the section today. So just, again, little slight recap. So what it's basically saying is that, just like we have organs, or not just like, obviously it's very different, but by way of analogy, we have organs and limbs that allow us to perform our will. God also has limbs that allow him to manifest his will and to bring that life force and vitality into the world. And what are these limbs or organs of God? These are the commandments, the positive commandments, the 248 positive commandments. And so what it's saying here, and we're beginning to explore this idea that the way that the vitality comes into the world in a manifest way from God is through the performance of these commandments, of these 248 positive commandments. So to be continued with this idea tomorrow when we continue with the chapter, and I will speak to you then. Thanks for listening to the It Is Taught podcast, hosted by Sarit Switzer. This podcast is dedicated in loving memory of my maternal grandfather, Avraham Yitzchak ben Binyamin HaKohen of blessed memory. Music by Shoshana. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the show, please share it with others and subscribe on YouTube, Apple iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And make sure to leave us a 5-star review. To find out more about the It Is Taught project, including more information on my soon-to-be published book, please visit our website, itistaught.com. To catch the latest from me, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Looking forward to speaking with you tomorrow, and until then, have a great day.